Welcome to I Don't Need an Acting Class with Milton Justice.
Walker mentioned our new sponsor, WeAudition.com, and I was looking over their website, and it's incredible. I mean, it's such a great idea. I can't believe somebody didn't come up with it earlier. But one of the things I'm always giving people a bad time about are readers and who they read with. Wesley sent me a fabulous audition recently, and it was like the worst reader I've ever heard. And I said, so what did you do? Get your sister? And so they supply readers. And the neat thing about the readers is other actors have put ratings about how good they are. So you can kind of look at that. And it's really inexpensive. The normal monthly fee is like $10 a month. But if you listen to this podcast and put in the code acting class, it's only $7.50 a month. Anyway, I think it's a great deal. You should look it over, and I'd join if I were you because, they do self-tapes and they have people read with you. It really is kind of a full-service thing that you're looking for. I was having a conversation with Teo this morning. He was reading the Studs Terkel book, Hard Times, because of his character that he's working on, the judge he's working on, grew up during the Depression. And I had this discussion with Justine while we were working that it's very, very good. And Hard Times is particularly good because it's real people in real circumstances. And so finding books as part of research that are general overviews of, say, the time period is not as usable as firsthand experiences of people who were there. Justine is working on the 60s. And so I was saying, see if you can find specific stories of people who were there and living in New York in the 60s, because then you get that personal experience, which is really important. So Teo was reading Hard Times, and he was talking about certain things he was getting from it, and was mentioning this person who knew that, and this person who saw that, and this person who said that they didn't understand what had happened to society because during the Depression, nobody knew that it was called the Great Depression. They just knew they were having hard times. And so because of that, they cared about their fellow human being. They cared about other people. And this, at any rate, so the person was asking about this. But Teo asked an interesting question afterwards. And what he said was, I'm trying to figure out how this character fits into that. And this is a small vocabulary difference, but I think it's an essential one. And I said, the question is not how does my character fit into the time frame, but how does the time frame influence my character? Now, look, the joy of what we're working on is we know where the play will end. We know what our character ends up doing. It's not like life. It's not like you start out on a journey and you have no idea where the journey is going to end up. The beauty of a play is we know where we are headed. So it's easier to figure out, how does this social circumstance, how does this world affect what my character becomes? So in a sense, you are looking, depending on the time frame, also towards the future. And it's important to know that there is no set answer. My father and mother both grew up in the Depression. Because of my mother growing up in the Depression, she was very, very smart with money. Because my father grew up during the Depression, he wanted to make sure that none of us suffered the way he had. And he was absolutely loose with money. So you see, it's like you can't say that because they grew up in the Depression, this is how they will end up. It's not clear. But how they eventually end up is clear because it's built into the text. And so therefore, I can use what is available in the time frame in the way that I need it. And it does enhance it. It does give it authority. It does help me. The comment that one of these characters made about that there was a time when people cared about other human beings is probably a piece of information that Teo will be able to use while building his judge, because the judge was famous for saying that every human life is important. So knowing that information, I don't know, it helps you. It gives you confidence. It gives you something to hold on to. And so that's why all of this information is useful. It helps you because it helps you get an entire picture about how did this person grow up. The other note that I have, and this came up again working with Justine a while ago, translate what you know into behavior. And it's an important thing to figure out. And you may not have the answer right away, but you begin to have pieces of information that you know. Pieces of information that you can look at it and you can say, well, one of the things they did was. So these are pieces of information that you know. Often it's a plot. If I said to Raphael, one of the pieces of information that we know about this German Jew who left Nazi Germany when he was 9 and eventually was part of the American Armed Forces, freed a concentration camp, and then volunteered to be a translator at the Nuremberg trial. So we have all of that information of things that we know. So what does that tell you about this person? What does that tell you about his personality? Well, you may not get that answer right away, but eventually that's what you have to get to. You have to figure out, so what does that tell me? Justine's character felt desperately and passionately in love with the boy while she was still in high school, married him after, 4 days?
Months, but...
Yes, and so a couple of months. They lived together for, 2 weeks? And then they split.
Yeah, they were married for 6 days total.
Yes, they were married for 6 days and then they split. So you have these things, but you have to figure out what does that tell you about this person? What does that tell you about this person? And this is really helpful, I think, when you get sides on Tuesday for an audition on Wednesday. You just look at it and ask yourself, what does that tell me about this person? Because it all gets down to how do they live in the world? In the same way that knowing that they grew up in the South in Louisville, knowing what they did, any of these things begins to tell you certain things because of what they did. They came to New York. So what does that tell you about a person? Everything there is so useful for us because it helps build a human being. So, I mean, that it's just a really important, it's an important usable piece of information that helps us because we can look at it and say, well, he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. And you can say to yourself, well, what kind of person does this? And then this, and then this. And it's not necessarily something that you get easily, but once you get it, it's like things kind of just fall off. And I do like the thing that we learned from Sharon Carnegie about seeing a second person, that you're building another person. I think that's very good. I think it helps. Certainly it helps me, because it means that I'm not trying to figure out how do I adapt me to play this part. What it allows me to do is to say there's this other person there that I'm building. And so I am giving him these particular attributes. And then once I give him these particular attributes, then I know then I can move into him. I move out of me and into him. And I just thought that was really good. I thought that was very, very usable. So with all of these things, I just think it's important for us to realize how much usable information we have. That's very, very helpful. But I thought it was very good to change our thinking from how does my character fit into this, but rather how does this piece of information influence my character. I do understand one of the challenges of acting is that everything is so damned unclear that you just never know. You never know what makes sense. And so anytime I have something that will give me confidence, then it's helpful. As soon as I've got something that really gives me the confidence of ownership, then I say, yes, that's great. That's really great. He grew up during the Depression, during a time when people really cared about other people, and eventually he became a judge who was famous for having said all people's lives are important. And so it gives me something solid to hold on to because I know how he grew up. And for me, it just turns the dial on it. I find it to be a very, very interesting thing to say, yes, I know how he grew up, and so therefore it makes sense to me that this is how he ended up.
I Don't Need an Acting Class is hosted and created by Milton Justice. Senior producer is me, Walker Vreeland, and director of online media is Evan Sollers. Music by Jeffrey Keyser Trio, May This Be Love, from their album On My Way to You. If you have a moment, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find us. And if you would like to send an email, if you have a question for Milton, you can do so at questionsformilton@gmail.com. Another way to get in touch is on Instagram at I Don't Need an Acting Class. It's brought to you by WeAudition.com, a full-service online platform for actors. And if you sign up and use the code ActingClass, get 25% off. Again, get 25% off when you use the code ActingClass. Again, the website is WeAudition.com. Have a fabulous week, everybody, and we will see you back here next time.